Hey guys, welcome back. I have a short little video for you today. I'm going to show you how to do this very easily. And you're thinking, you look at this and go, oh, it looks so complicated. It actually doesn't have to be. So, I got in, a few days ago, I got in this, which I already had this set. Sorry, it's a little dirty. I had this piece, which is the 15 piece. It's about $20-ish and some change. And then I got full set syndrome and got this. So, yeah, I swatched it, and I will show the swatching at the end in case anybody's interested. This side is where I just put it onto the paper, and then this side is where I blended it with Gamsol. It's kind of like when you have the ink tints where you show it regular, not messed with, and then you show it activated. It's kind of helpful. When you do the same thing with pencils, you do like pressing hard and then just pressing light just to see how it reacts. So I also did, as a bonus, I also did the metallic set that I have, which aren't those gorgeous? But this is the rest of the 30 set. Now there is actually a 40 set, and I think that's because it includes some of these metallics, perhaps. But yeah, this is that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the, where is it? The brown. And I'm going to put it into the spots. And then I have some watercolor. Let's see where, okay. And you don't have to use watercolor per se. You can use, these are the two watercolors I'm going to be using. Is this cream from Daler Roni. It's like a generic thing. I'll do a review on it sometime. But they're really, really nice. They're budget. I got the full set at like Walmart for like $12. But the pigment is so nice. I mean, for being a budget watercolor, not like Winsor & Newton or something like that, it is definitely student grade. It's borderline artist grade. It's really not quite, but it's if you're a beginner, I would highly recommend this. It's really nice. So, and then I also have this Van Dyke from Master's Touch Premium Watercolor. Also very, very nice. It was like $6.99 for this huge, humongous tube, and it is very pigmented. Really, it is Hobby Lobby's generic brand, so but it's really, really, really nice. So if you're just learning, I highly recommend, if you live near a Hobby Lobby, I highly recommend this paint. I mean, $7 for this ginormous tube of watercolor. You cannot beat it. So now what you want to do is grab your crayon and make sure it's sharpened. And honestly, there's two ways to do that. You can use a craft knife, like this, or you can just use a simple like $2 sharpener like this. I mean, it's really your preference. But the nice thing about using this is you can take, and I got this little ceramic daisy palette. I think it was like, I don't know, $10 on Amazon, something like that. I'll look it up, but it's not expensive. Just look up ceramic palette and you should come across it. But that's how I did that. And you want to save those because I'm going to show you a little trick using a mix of the brown and the ochre. And that watercolor is dried up, but don't worry, it will reactivate. But you just take your little sharpener and you just make sure there's no paper. They have the little tabs here that you can peel back. Make sure there's no paper, because you don't want the paper mixing in with, you know, that. Like it kind of did right there. See, you don't want that. Missed a spot, obviously. And you just basically, you want this nice and sharpened for this particular application. Just make sure you get it all off in there so you don't make a mess. And set that aside. And let's see, I think I will do this one. You know, actually, that one's a little big. I'm going to do this one. It's a little smaller. And you just go along. Make sure you don't want to push like really hard, because if you push too hard, then you're going to break the, you know, the crayon. And well, these aren't wildly expensive. They're not, you know, definitely not budget either. So, you know, you want to just treat them carefully. So I'm going to do the rest of this. I think you kind of get the idea, and I'll be back. Okay, so through the magic of editing, I have finished the rest of the dots just by simply firmly, but not too firmly, just filling them in. Easy peasy. Now, I'm going to take my little ceramic palette here, and I'm going to reactivate this because it dried up a little on me. You don't want too much water because you don't want it to be a wash. And I also forgot to put in my paint here. Whoopsie. Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to drop some water using one of my favorite and easiest methods in the world. Steady your brush. This. You can get them on Amazon for under eyedroppers. You can get some that are glass, some that are plastic like these, some that have a bent tip, various sizes. I mean, they're not expensive. Now, you don't want to add too much water because in this case, I want the paint to be a little bit thick. I don't want it to be like super runny. Okay. Get just the right amount of water in there. Not too much, but not too little. Here. And you want to kind of, if you can use, you don't have to use watercolor. You can use water-soluble crayons. It doesn't have to be watercolor. You know, I forget that this Master's Touch, even though it's kind of a generic brand, it is so pigmented. Look at that. Like, I mean, I don't know if y'all can see that, but look how pigmented that is. And even that generic brand, the other one is got green paint into it. So now I'm going to add a little more of this cream in, because you want a certain consistency for this application. Like I said, you don't want it too runny, and I think I added a little too much water trying to reactivate it. So the easiest way to do that is just, you know, add some more paint. See, that's the kind of consistency you want. Hopefully you can see that. You want it a little bit thick, but not too thick. This is assuming you're using watercolor. If you're using water-soluble crayons, what you can do is get one of those palettes like this. And excuse, this one is really dirty, but from Caran D Ache. Excellent, excellent. I highly recommend get one of these. Scratch it on that first, and then pick it up from there and put it onto your piece. Footnote: watch how things can stain. As you can see, I wiped that off and I used something with phthalo in it, I think, and it stained it. So some pigments can be very staining. Just a footnote there. So, okay. But I'll be able to save this extra brown watercolor because I have one of those Stay Wet little palettes. Amazing things. You put your stuff into them and it like seals it so that they don't dry out as quickly. They're really amazing. They're called Stay Wet, I believe. So, anyway, I'm going to add this in just a little bit, and I did not add any pencil into this, but I'm going to add a little bit of this just by itself. There. Give that a second to dry. This is how I did it previously, but I haven't added the Van Dyke. So I'm going to do that while I'm waiting for that to dry a little bit. You don't want to go in right away because then it'll bleed into it. And in this case, you don't want it to bleed. So while I'm waiting for that to just set up just for a minute. I'm going to just kind of throw that in there. Oh, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? You do have to be careful in these Kirby books when you are using wet watercolor. Watercolor crayons are a little less likely to bleed through, although they certainly can. But if your watercolor, even your water soluble crayons, if it's too thin, like a wash thin, it will bleed through very badly. So your best bet when you're using Kirby's books and you want to do wet media, make it a little bit thick. Not like, super thick, but it doesn't have to be paste thick, but you do want it to be just a little on the thicker side, like these two. They're not wash thin, but they're not like paste thick either. Somewhere's in the middle of the road. I.e. less water to go through the paper. I hope that makes sense. So, just stuff crashing down around me. So, get your little... I highly recommend these, by the way. They're called hand towels. They are the most amazing thing. They're like paper towels on steroids. And they come in a box like a box of Kleenex would. So they're thicker and sturdier. They're really phenomenal things. I accidentally got a bunch at BJ's thinking they were tissues, and Rob and I, my husband, have both fallen in love with them. So, yeah. All right, so let's get back to this. And if you're using a little palette, I would highly recommend putting down a piece of paper or a little paper towel, something like that, in case you have an accident. Make sure you don't have too much water on your brush. You want a little, but you don't want it like falling off the you don't want it running off the ferrule and into, right into your thing. So just kind of give it a tap like that. Watch this. This is, you see the texture, right? That's really important for these books. I'm going to move that out of my way a little. Now you see, this is those brown marks. That's where we put the oil Caran D Ache Neo1, which is their oil pastel crayons. Watch this. You're thinking, oh, it's going to take me forever to go in between those little dark spots. It's going to be a pain. It's going to take forever. No, it's not. There you go. That's it. Like, just like that. So you get your crayon. It could be any crayon, any color. Put it down where you want the wet media to not go. Put your wet media over it, and boom, there it is. So you got that little tiny spots, and you don't want to have to take like 5 hours going in between each and everything. I'm wiping my brush off a little bit, and I'm going to go back over it to sort of clear up some of the paint that has gone over, that has remained on top of the oil crayon. And you can go back over it. You can take your crayon here and go back over it if you want. Like, say, or you could take a little Q-tip. They have like the pointed ones for little details like this. And you can wipe it off with that. Like, I'll show you. They're really cool. You take your little Q-tip like this, and you can just go in like that. And that will get whatever is still sitting on top of it in. There you go. Ta-da. So there's two ways to take care of whatever may be still residing on top of that. Your Q-tip and your sharpened crayon. And there you have it. Now, one other little fun bonus. If you have, you have some, like, say you have some residual. These right here are the ochre and the brown. So you take your Gamsol. It says it's odorless, and it generally is, but even like after a while, if you like, say you spill a half a bottle of it, you will notice some smell. And if you're sensitive to mineral spirits and binders like I am, make sure to wash your hands afterwards. So because we're always touching our hands to our faces. So just be aware of that. But take your little eyedropper, squeeze in a modest amount. You don't want too much, okay? It depends on like how much crayon you have. For this application, I have a fair bit of crayon, so I want a little more than that. Excuse the boarding house reach. You don't want too much though. That's probably about right. You'll learn after a while to be able to judge it. And your best bet, you can use like the palette things that they have for like oil painting, or if you don't have one, seriously, a popsicle or a dessert cup stick. And what in the world? Okay, hold on. This little guy does not belong. I don't know why he's there, but he does not belong. Yeah, the green does not belong, but oh well. I don't know how that got there, but okay. I'm just going to ignore him. And the reason why I found out the hard way, you don't want too much of this, because if you have too much, it won't form the paste that you want. And it'll just be an oily mess. But you want enough that it'll blend. And here I'm not liking this a little too much, so I'm going to take my brown crayon and I'm going to actually, well, no, hold on, I have an idea. I'm going to take some of the brown shavings that I have right here, and I'm just going to use my stick to pick them up, and voila. And like I said, I can't post links. I don't have enough followers yet. So if you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe and comment and share. It would really be appreciated. And I am always interested in anything that you have to say. I'm absolutely open to, you know, critiques, comments, whatever. I am an open book. Now see, that's still kind of funky. So I'm still sort of not liking that. It's kind of funky. So what I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to add, and it can get a little messy, but you do not want to, I repeat, do not want to use one of your good brushes. I did that and nearly ruined my brush. So I would advise a palette knife or a popsicle stick and just a Q-tip for cleaning up the edges, which are going everywhere. So what I'm going to do is grab some of this Van Dyke here, and I'm just going to pick it up. But I think I'm going to do it with my, I think I'm going to use my little Q-tip here. It'll also get some of this off too. There. And it cleans that up at the same time. Okay. There. Okay. So let's grab this again. Oh my gosh, I got too much pigment in there. And you can see that it's slowly beginning to come together. Now, if you absolutely must use a brush, like in this case, I got too much of this mixture into this, and I'm like kind of annoyed. You see how the oil pastel and the Gamsol is causing it to kind of float onto the Van Dyke there? So, yeah. That's really not what I wanted. So if you really must use a brush, pick one of your crappy brushes that you don't care what happens to. Which in this case, this is one of those brushes. So if I accidentally am not able to clean it up, it's no big deal. And sometimes you do have to use a brush. So don't use one of your good brushes like I accidentally did. You don't want to do that. And I'm just picking up here because I've already sort of ruined that watercolor with the oil, so it kind of doesn't matter at this point. You know, things happen. I could have edited this out, but you know what? Things happen, life happens, and you just sometimes you have to learn to sort of roll with the punches. All right, so things happen. It's life. So I'm going to use this to go into here a little bit. And it did lighten it a little bit, which is okay. It's interesting because now it's a mix of watercolor and oil, which is very interesting, I must say. So, but I love the color combo. Since I added that Van Dyke, I could have just done it a different way, I think, but it's okay. Things happen. It's a nice little mix. And because it still has the oil pastel in it, it should still not blend. Like, you should still be able to put the wet media over it. But if you do ever do something like that, I wouldn't try saving the watercolor because you probably, like me, have messed it up. So, but yeah. Okay, so suppose you have some extra shavings. Like I have this extra brown shavings here. I'm not going to use those per se, but I'm going to show you a way to use your shavings. In this case, I'm actually going to make some because I want to work on this part right here. and that's not going to be brown. So you can take your sharpener, or I'm going to show you the other way, which is using the craft knife. Just gently shave some off into the thing. It's a little more tedious, but you know, it's just another way to do it. You just have to be careful you don't dig too hard. Like your angle for your craft knife needs to be kind of not like this, but kind of like this. And my pellet strip. That should be enough. You don't really need a lot. And FYI, another little tip here with your Gamsol, make sure that you seal it up when you're not using it, because it will evaporate. So I have that, and this is olive and yellow and light olive, sorry. Olive and light olive. I thought that would be a nice combo for his body. Let's see, maybe just a little bit more. Okay, so suppose you have shavings, okay? You got these two shavings. Now, you take your Gamsol, which I have already poured into there, using the little eyedropper. I'm probably going to need a little more. And you just put a little into each spot. Pick it up there and just, you don't want too much, because too much and it will end up being runny. And you want it kind of, you don't want it quite like a paste, but you don't want it runny either. It's, you'll see what I mean. I'll show you. And if you need to add more, you know, you can, obviously. I would go slow and just add a little at a time. That way you're not, because it's easier to add more than it is to, you know, thicken it up, which you would have to add more of your crayon. So the best way, you can use a palette knife, you can use an old brush, but honestly I found that the best way to do this is like a popsicle stick or a an old paintbrush that you don't care about. Do not use your good paintbrushes. I made the mistake of accidentally doing that and kind of ruined it. So yeah, don't do that. But this works just as well if you don't have a palette knife. You see how it's just mixing it right in? You do have to agitate it a little bit. I mean, so it does take a few minutes. You know, not forever and ever, but you see it's slowly dissolving it. And I'm going off screen. I'm basically wiping it off so it doesn't blend into the next color. You always want to make sure you clean your popsicle stick off, because you see the ends of it, which I need to dissolve a little better, obviously. There, that's a little better. Now I'm gonna set this down and wipe off my stick to it, and then I'm going to mix my other color. These are gonna look really pretty as his body, I think. And I know it does say odorless, but it does smell a little. But you know, again, just be careful, be mindful. If you know, like I have sensitivities to a lot of the binders in the pastel pencils, the pastel, you know, the chalky type. So I, you know, using mineral spirits, I have to make sure I wash my hands afterwards and not, you know, like touch my face. It's not like a lethal allergy or anything, but it, you know, it's an irritant. So there, see how easy that was? Now you take your, you can take a old paintbrush that you don't like care about, or you can use one of your little tools. I have a tool here. It's like this. These are really great. They come in a set of about 3, I think. And they're by Mod Podge. They're famous for like their puzzle glue and things like that. By the company called Plaid. You can use that if you want. But you basically just kind of... and you just kind of paint. But you do have to work quickly because it will seep through. So let's see if it... Nope, nothing on the other side. That's fantastic. Because it will soak in pretty quickly. Now I'm going to take my... Oh yeah, I knew those two would look good together. Now the great thing about this is that it doesn't matter if you get the blending just right initially. Don't like freak out or anything, because you can go back in with the Gamsol and like fix it. But you do have to work a little bit quickly. Because it settles right into the paper. Now, what I could have done probably in hindsight is put some, see, there's where the magic is. I went back in with the light olive, and I went back in over it, and look, it just blends right in. And that is how you use up your leftovers. One of the ways, there's many ways, but that's... Look at that. See? And if you look on the other side, nothing. I'll show you. I'll pull my book over and show you. See? Nothing. It's right here. Nothing. It doesn't soak through. It takes a lot anyway. I've done it, but it takes an awful lot. And so if you're unhappy with that, you just take your little straight Gamsol, which I have over here, and you just kind of go in. There we go. Sorry about that. And use your straight Gamsol to kind of further blend it in a little bit. And that way you don't have to waste your sprinkles, as I call them. I call them my sprinkles. It's a good way just to get the full benefit of, you know, of the crayons, because they aren't, you know, they aren't cheap. But yeah, I did, like I said earlier, I did do a whole swatch of these, as you can tell. And then I also did the metallics as a bonus. This is, minus the 2 crayons that I used, this is what this looks like, minus the sticky notes. Gosh, sorry, it's been a day. And this is what comes around it, and it has another sticky note on it. Awesome. Okay, and it comes in about 4 different languages. It talks about them briefly. It's, you know, it says they're AP certified, and it talks about the crayon. Ta-da, right here, which is really cool. It lists the colors right here by number and color swatch. Whoops, that should do that way. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that. So you see there's the number and then the color swatch. So that's really nice. Yeah, and this kind of comes over both sides of it. But yeah, that's pretty much the largest set. So yeah, I will probably do the rest of this snail with using the methods that I showed you. You know, just pencil part in that you want to kind of stay put. It's almost like using masking fluid, only you can't take this off per se. You could blend it in a little more with the Gamsol if you wanted, but it's kind of like using masking fluid, but non-removable. You just put it where you want the color to stay, and then you put your watercolor or your other wet media over it, and you see how easy that was, right? It didn't go, the watercolor just went right over it, and you can use your little Q-tip to get off what's sitting on top of it, or you can just use your brush to kind of agitate it off of it, and you have the color in beneath it. So Inktense does the same thing, but this is a little better to me. I think this is a little better than that. But you see how you don't have to waste your shavings. It's really making the most out of your art supplies and getting everything that you can out of them. So, like I said, if you found this helpful and enjoyable, despite my little oopsies, I really hope you'll consider liking and subscribing and maybe giving it a share so that it can reach more people and maybe help them out too. I'd appreciate it. Please stay safe and have a good one, guys. Bye.